Good afternoon, my name is Kye Gbangbola and my company is called Total Eco Management, known by the small three letters TEM, and we are certified training partners for the Global Reporting Initiative, also known by the acronym GRI. Now, our joint mission, TEM and GRI, is to make sustainability reporting standard practice by providing guidance and support. You will hear echoes of some of the previous speakers, but this formalises corporate sustainability and measurement and reporting, so you can see how it operates in action. So straight to the point, why does GRI work? Well, it works because it's about sustainability. It's about transforming human thinking and business approach. GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative, and I'm going to use GRI from now on, enables the imperative that is the biggest change management programme since Victorian times to come to life in order to tackle what Stern calls the biggest challenge of our times. Now, cards on the table, we all here have to realise that there are many hidden agendas. Reporting provides information to run the business and provides greater accountability to internal and external stakeholders. Some think that preparing a sustainability report is rather difficult. Now, those people need to come and speak to us, because all you need is the right information and some support. Many of the world's leading companies and their supply chains report, including John Lewis, Marks & Spencer's, Lafarge, Tata Steel, Microsoft, Apple, Kellogg's, Nike, etc. These organisations fly with their radar on. Reporting is mandatory for all public companies in several countries in Europe, for all businesses in South Africa, and at home, all of the FTSE Top 100 organisations have some type of sustainability reporting. Plus, we have the Climate Change Act, which has provisions within it, Section 84, for mandatory reporting. Now, the government could have made the decision last month, but they've made a decision whereby they need a bit more time, around which they will hopefully fall on the side of, yes, mandatory reporting is quite right, and we will action that provision within the 2008 Climate Change Act. Now, at the same time, we have Edward Davey, Secretary of State for Climate Change, who very much as Professor Eakins is in support of mandatory reporting. Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General for the United Nations, recently said, sustainability reporting must become part of the DNA of all organisations. I further hope eminent people like Paul Morrell at Business Innovation and Skills will encourage reporting across the UK. Now, even our professional membership bodies, like the Chartered Institute Building, are leading by example and leading their sectors by reporting, shaping these sectors for growth, efficiency, and meeting our 21st century challenges with 21st century solutions. Now, we can all do this, and this is something that other institutions, including the RIBA, can follow and show leadership within their particular sectors. Now, those that report and others that want to report, they keep some excellent company, as you've seen with some of the companies that I've outlined, in choosing to fly with their radar on. However, those that choose to fly with their radar off already are being challenged by consumers, customers, clients, investors, legislation and regulators, as well as their own shareholders and board. Improved business performance is actually the bottom line. Chris Hume said to me that there's a company, they're a transport company, and they place seals on all of their air supply equipment, and they decided they were going to turn off lighting that wasn't in use, as well as appliances, and they saved themselves £2 million in a year. You see, the beauty of the Global Reporting Initiative is the level playing field, where the metrics are common, comparable, and rankable. It compares apples with apples, no matter where a company is, or its size or location in the world. Now, training in the process of reporting is clearly very important. And that's the reason why we often as professionals go away and become qualified in the things that we do. So thought and mechanism must be applied together in order to deliver GRI well. At the end, no doubt, there will be an opportunity for Q&A. But just a quick couple of questions which I often ask the audience, and it doesn't matter what sphere of business they come from, and that is a show of hands for who works for an organisation that produces a sustainability report. Okay, there's a couple, which is good. Now, anyone that would like to know more will obviously be able to feel free and come and see me afterwards. But for now, let's crack on, and we are going to go through what is it all about, and we will end up with some chat on leadership, and thereafter the Q&A. So, what is it all about? Well, no talk from me is complete without something about stuff, and as you can see here, we have a linear material economy. Okay? Starts off with extraction, and then the real serious stuff happens in this area of consumption, and then materials thereafter going to disposal. Now, you cannot continue to run a linear system on finite resources indefinitely. It simply doesn't work. So, we need a new way, and that new way is emerging. It's meant to be the... Okay, and this new way is about a three-dimensional approach focused on responsible resourcing and closed-loop production. We're trying to make more with less and recognising the elephant in the room, which is population, and sharing less of the world's resources with more people. I show this diagram to clearly signpost the desired behavioural change. It helps to explain the need for an accelerated transition to a new green and inclusive economy. It helps to understand what is happening to people and our planet. Now, you may have heard Truan talk earlier today about how green are the Olympics. I could say a lot about the Olympics because I worked on it, but I wanted to give it a quick mention as sustainability and reporting to the Global Reporting Initiative are a central part of the drivers of performance for the Olympic Park and its performance into the future. The Games incorporates life cycle assessment, a sustainability focus on what is best and not what is easiest, community cohesion and local investment, sourcing and responsible sourcing and legacy, all environmentally, all combined with measurement and reporting of the day-to-day impact of the Games, both environmentally, socially and economically. Now, if I was to draw a graph of the Games and an event, what you would usually see, if I took the vertical axis to be sustainability and the horizontal axis to be time, with any normal event you would find a big peak at the beginning where you were dealing with the various venues and producing the venues, and after a while it would settle down to a background level of operation. Now, you could transpose carbon or energy within that, so then when you look at the Olympic Games, what you have is a far smaller peak at the beginning, and it settles down to a far lower level of background for its ongoing sustainability. Now, 5 years ago, the Olympic Park was 246 hectares of contaminated land, including 215 buildings that were basically derelict and not cared for, as well as rather a lot of Second World War bomb debris and even some bombs. And then in comes the soil hospital. And the Soil Hospital has recycled that material. 98.5% of that material has been recycled. So unlike what you would usually find on sites, which is dig and dump, or cap, or bioremediation, we now have a means of converting contaminated material into real building material. And what's happened here is through a process that has involved crushing, cleaning, heating, stabilising, and blending, these contaminants have been turned into type 1, type 2, various forms of aggregate that can be used in substructure and superstructure, as well as being used on retaining walls and earthworks. Now, we've recycled 835 metres cubed of material, and that saved 190,000 lorry movements across London, and the carbon impact, as well as the impact in terms of disruption that causes to local people. We also have the housing, which is a triumph of good design and physical functional form, which is known as a type of clean energy development called the enclave. The way in which neighbourhoods are designed and operate has an enormous impact on economic wealth, the natural systems, quality of life that the residents will come to enjoy. And in this case, we have 20% of the parking spaces for electric cars. The properties achieve the Code for Sustainable Homes Level 4, and that is 80% energy efficiency improvement on current building regulations. So it's fantastic to think that the residents that will live here after the Games will be able to access anywhere in London within a few yards of their home, I should say a couple of hundred yards of their home. They will be able to get to a hub that will take them across London, into Europe, other places across the country. They have all sorts of commercial and leisure facilities that are available to them. So they really don't have a need for a car. And at the same time, in terms of quality of life and health and well-being, 45% of these properties have gardens. Now, this brings me on to the stadium, another part of the Olympic Games, 128,000-seater. Did you know that it's the first stadium that has been built, designed to be erected and then dismantled and re-erected elsewhere? And at the same time as being able to achieve that, there was the reuse of over-ordered steel from oil explorations. Yes, an engineer was up in Scotland, he saw steel on the ground, gathering moss, and thought, we can utilise this for the Olympic Stadium. He proved all the calculations, and then the steel came down, 2,600 tonnes of steel, saving the stadium budget £500,000. Now, when you compare the 2012 stadium with the Beijing Bird's Nest, the Beijing Bird's Nest has 49,000 tonnes of steel within it. And in total, the 2012 stadium has 4,900 tonnes of steel. Much, much less. So you're gathering the point that I'm making here. This is an opportunity whereby we are using less materials for the same function. Now, we also have the Great British Garden. And the Great British Garden is 45 hectares of parklands and public realm as part of the Olympic Park. The wetland landscape works in harmony with the natural elements that make up the riverine landscape and promotes biodiversity. And it does this because the design acknowledges the environmental forces and flows, such as the daily changing water levels, to deliver appropriate ecological habitats, whilst alleviating flood risks. This open landscape incorporates the UK's largest non-potable supply network for irrigation, urinals and WCs. So there you have it, the journey from a contaminated site to a wonder of World Heritage. And by the way, the Great British Garden is the largest parkland developed in Europe for over 150 years. The Games had a budget of £8 billion. It was 800 million underspent. and a year ahead of programme, and that is why we're enjoying at this time the various programmes of test events. The Games Global Reporting Initiative report is a global first for massive events and was awarded the highest level, A, for its disclosure on sustainability. Now, we're in the great hallowed halls of the RIBA. It would be remiss of me not to mention the Learning Legacy, which is part of the Olympic Games. This is a web-based resource for all that work within the built environment, sharing knowledge and lessons learned to help raise the bar in sustainability, not only across the UK, but across the world. And I have the privilege of speaking at various events, and there are no greater mega projects than you will find with the Olympic Games, largely because of the things that I've just outlined. And so I can share with you LOCOG's dearest wish that the UK Games become synonymous with sustainability, that encourages a global change in thinking, that places sustainability at the heart of everything that we do as people on the planet. Never again should there be events that do not measure and report their sustainability. So, why report? And what is the bottom line? What's in it for you? Change is needed so that the planet and its people can move into a sustainable global economy. Organisations need change in order for long-term strategy and success. To effect change, organisations need to set goals and measure their progress towards them. The World Economic Summit at Davos in January this year heralded the simple message that all companies of significance have moved towards valuing sustainability. Davos also had the world's young leaders and shapers, and they are passionate and committed to running their organisations as being forces for good in society, for a sustainable present as well as a sustainable future. Sustainability reporting is a key tool to set goals, measure progress, and manage sustainability. The process enables internal and external stakeholders to get a clear idea of a company's impacts, risks, and opportunities to evidence where an organisation can improve. You see, reporting goes beyond being green. It's about better business. Now, sustainability reporting is about the economic, social, and environmental impacts of an organisation through its day-to-day activities. A report is a tool for change, as I've said earlier. It is unique to an organisation and that organisation's context. It is you that chooses what to report, just like you would choose what goes into a business case. You choose what is relevant to you. It is smart to start small so that you don't encourage the organisation into any type of initiative overload. It becomes more seamless with the organisation's strategy. The common metrics provide clear, comparable evidence in order to support an organisation's sustainability claims. How often do we find organisations that make claims about their sustainability that can't be substantiated? So, in the famous words of a management guru known as Drucker, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. And what you cannot manage, you cannot change. Data is generated and reported so that you can manage change, conserve resources, enhance shareholder value, and stakeholder confidence. It's very important to be able to have that information so that people can engage and take responsibility and participate in terms of an organisation wanting to evidence and move forward. The bottom line, once again, is that reporting improves corporate performance for management, governance, through better practices and processes. So, what to report, as I've said, depends on the organisation. And we also have had the benefit of a recent report by KPMG as to what exactly are the benefits that organisations find that do report. And they surveyed 2,000 chief executives and found enhanced reputation, regulatory and legal compliance, reduced costs, increased profits. These are things that every organisation would want. Greater shareholder value, employee retention and recruitment. People like working for organisations that can evidence their sustainability. It's better for being able to sustain and retain staff, and it is very good for being able to attract staff to organisations. Reduced environmental impacts, of course, are impacts that relate to carbon, energy, water, waste, ecology, biodiversity, health and well-being. Now, if you multiply this across all sectors, as you would find in the UK Carbon Plan, it is understandable that governments need to effect change, and they can see how that would come from organisations and a whole country that reports. Indeed, a very interesting fact that has been identified by PricewaterhouseCoopers, as they see it as a fact, they have found that reporters have a reduced cost of borrowing, which diminishes the cost of capital to those organisations. So there are some very good reasons as to why companies report. Now, what exactly is good to report? I've said that it depends on the organisation, and the usual suspects that organisations come to report on are energy, carbon, water, waste and transport. Now, if you couple these with some indicators and some measures that come from a standard annual report, and you are swiftly on the road to reporting and being able to substantiate or otherwise the direction of travel and validity of sustainability claims that are made by your organisation. Thereafter, choices on what to measure and report continue to relate to a particular organisation. Let me give you an example. If we were to take an agri company that is a producer of cereal, they might choose to look at indicators of their supply chain policies and procedure. And they would do this because it measures the organisation's business with local suppliers and investment in local capacity. They would look at local hiring procedures and the numbers and positions of people that are locally appointed. Again, a very good indicator of investment in the local economy. Looking at customer satisfaction is always an excellent indicator to look at because it provides an organisation with its mandate to operate. We'd also look at occupational health and safety, which measures employees made ill, injured or killed through work activities. Ally that with measuring training and education, and it's very clear how organisations that have issues in terms of their numbers and occupational health and safety can identify and secure improvements. So you would report the number and level of people within the organisation that are undergoing training and education. Now, some of the areas that are very challenging are the measurement of human rights violations and forced labour, child labour and the rights of Indigenous people. Get these sorts of things wrong and an organisation can have a very difficult time. Wages in relation to local minimum wage and exploitation and failure to pay a living wage can also be a problem in terms of, if you look in Africa, there's some 400 million people that earn less than $1.25 a day. Now, there is a government that's decided we're going to eradicate poverty quite simply by saying that you have to have 25 cents a day, and thereafter people will no longer be in poverty. Whereas in that particular country, 25 cents takes them 3 stops on a rickshaw. So I wouldn't advise anybody here to take that particular tack. But therein you can see the importance of having indicators. And we've seen recently with 3 heads of organisations that reporting makes things very visible to executives and shareholders. So we've seen the example with Aviva. Now, as regards what to report within any sector, we can advise you as Total Eco Management those areas that would be very important in terms of different sectors, whether they're media, whether they're oil, whether they're construction. Now, a quick look at construction and the built environment, since we are at the RIBA. In real estate, we would look at building labelling in terms of design standards and requirements. We'd look at BREEAM in the UK. We'd look at Green Star in Australia. We'd look at LEEDs in America. We'd look at waste avoidance practices for material selections, fines for non-compliance, occupational health and safety, corruption, supply chain practices, local labour in construction, remediation, mitigation of adverse biodiversity, approaches to both new build as well as retrofit. And I might tell you, retrofit is the biggest game in town. There's some 26 million properties in the UK that are residential, another 5 million commercial. And we have to get those to 80% reduction in carbon emissions by 2050. Now, how many properties do you think we currently upgrade per week? A quick set of numbers. How many properties? 50 a week? Any callers upon that? Okay, now we currently actually have 700 per week that get upgraded. The need is 13,000 and over. So there is a big job to do, which kind of brings us into what we heard earlier by Professor Eakins. Now I'm going to show you a very simple example so that you can see how GRI actually works. Now, in order to report, there are some 80 indicators that an organisation can select from. And the levels and the gradings are level A, B or C. The entry level is level C, and this requires 10 indicators to be reported upon. Now, you could report on what is known as EN4, which is indirect energy. And to do that, you would simply collect energy bills on a quarterly basis, and at the end of the year, you would have your annual energy bills, and you would take your kilowatt hours into gigajoules, simple conversion. Thereafter, you could take those gigajoules and measure what's known as EN16, which is greenhouse gas emissions. And you can convert the gigajoules into kilograms of carbon per year, the organisation's carbon footprint. You could also look at water consumption, and that is meters cubed. So again, you're simply collecting energy bills, which anybody, senior or junior within an organisation, could quite easily do. But I've just shown you 30%, i.e. 3 indicators, of an entry-level C reporter. Now, increasingly, we as Total Eco Management are being engaged in the development of software that mines information to assemble data. Apps are also beginning to emerge, simplifying data collection. So increasingly, it is something that organisations will easily be able to engage in. GRI reporting as a framework is the next area I'm quickly going to talk about. GRI provides guidance and support through a framework developed by thousands of experts through a multi-stakeholder approach. This is part of GRI's strength. It's got experts from all over the world, eminent in their particular areas of business, civil society, labour, non-governmental organisations, governmental bodies, accountancy, academia, investment. This approach provides the Global Reporting Initiative with its credibility. The framework helps organisations on the sustainability reporting journey. It is reporting and this guidance that includes all of the issues that can be monitored to assess the organisation's sustainability performance. And at the heart of the guidelines, we find the principles, and the principles simply establish what and how to report. The standard disclosures establish what to report on. So when I identified earlier the various areas that are the indicators that an organisation can select, it's very clear that an organisation can rapidly move towards formalising its activity for sustainability within this framework. The Global Reporting Initiative also has formal alliances, and those formal alliances are with ISO, the International Standards Organisation, the Carbon Disclosure Project, the OECD, which is the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, the UN Global Compact. So it's very clear that in embracing the various sustainability standards that we find within the world, there is no need for reporters to go anywhere else. A very eminent person, Paul Honan of Chatham House, produced a report in January of this year called The Future of Sustainability Reporting. And he found that 95% of companies on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index use GRI, and at the same time within his report, he's absolutely clear that there needs to be intergovernmental commitments on sustainability if we're going to generate green economies. Now I'm going to tell you about the process. And the process is a journey in many ways, and the journey involves ensuring, at the first stage, good preparation like any journey. It engages internal stakeholders. First, we need to get top management buy-in. So we hold a kick-off meeting with all the relevant staff, and we consider the organisation's corporate strategy and the risks and opportunities for sustainability. We identify the appropriate issues, discuss time, cost, and resourcing in a very business-like fashion. It is important to have a kick-off meeting because it enables us to begin with the end in mind, to quote another famous management guru, Stephen Covey. Now, in the next phase of the journey, which is the connect phase, this is where we engage with external stakeholders. And what I'm describing here is part of the decision science aspect of the Global Reporting Initiative. You see, when we engage external stakeholders, we need to have a process, a systematic approach to identifying those that are more influential over the organisation, those that we have an influence upon and influence us. We need to be balanced, so we need to be prepared to gather the positive as well as the negative aspects of the comments. So listening is an important part of the GRI approach in working with stakeholders. Why would that be the case? Well, obviously, if you listen to organisations and engage with stakeholders and have that two-way dialogue, you have an opportunity to provide a very different perspective on the organisation's strengths and weaknesses. It also helps to avoid unexpected criticisms. So when that final report comes out, organisations don't necessarily seek to challenge as heavily in terms of, well, if you'd have only listened to us or we had an opportunity to speak, we'd have suggested a different way. Engaging with stakeholders helps to proactively identify problems, increase acceptance of the topics that the organisation chooses as material, and it builds positive external impressions of the organisation. This is reputation stuff. This is very important to organisations, and organisations being able to show that they're working with their wider stakeholders. In the next phase, the define phase, this is where we gather all of that information from the prepare phase and the connect phase and go through what's called a materiality test. And the materiality test takes the information identified and places it into a prioritization process. Thereafter, we're in a position to validate exactly what is most relevant. What are the risky areas? What is the high priority for the organisation in terms of reducing its impacts on the environment, socially, economically and environmentally? Once we've collected the data and gone through the define phase, we can set some goals, and it's only after setting goals that we have clarity around those areas that we want to report. So we then begin the monitor process, collecting information, reviewing that information on a regular basis to ensure that it is driving the business and the corporate strategy forward. Because remember, that's what it's all about. As we move towards producing our final report, remember when we get there to celebrate. But also, this is a continuous process. So we can't relax, we have to continue to move forward. Now I'm at my final slide, and this is on leadership. The Global Reporting Initiative provides an accessible yet globally recognised framework for companies that want to move towards a leadership position in a competitive marketplace. At TEM, our philosophy is simple: be the best that we can be so that we can help others to do the same. GRI is a process. It is simple and accessible at no cost because the Global Reporting Initiative is a public for good, and return on investment is clearly massive. For me, reporting is about better business. Reporting goes beyond being green, and GRI provides a systematic approach to reporting which links people behaviour, filling the gap between design and reality, and encouraging life cycle assessment. Business as usual is no longer sustainable. We are broadening out the metrics of success beyond profit. No companies that do not report really believe environmental or social governance issues are unrelated to their business. Does anyone really believe that? No, I don't believe any companies really take that point very seriously, because already there are governments out there that have decided that if you don't become sustainable, you simply will not receive the cash. It is not enough to see corporate social responsibility as a mere marketing tool or image campaign. Consumers, as well as prospective employees, expect companies to engage with social issues and be involved in a more meaningful way. Those who sacrifice the bigger picture in favour of short-term gains will eventually be left behind. As global and national legislation shifts to cut carbon emissions, it is likely that those organisations that cannot demonstrate that they operate to high levels of sustainability standards will increasingly be overlooked by investors, customers, clients, and their peers. If you don't build your organisation's sustainability, you simply won't get the work. Now, we can all report: large, small, public, private, voluntary, charitable, academic organisations. So, take action today, and like many organisations, become part of the solution. I hope all of this made sense, and feel free to ask questions. Thank you.
Any questions? I have a slight problem with the Olympics. I mean, they've obviously done a lot about sustainability of their construction at the site, but I'm a bit worried about their transport policy. I mean, they've sort of chosen to block off lanes in London simply so that VIPs can whisk back and forth to the games uninterrupted. That suggests that VIPs are more important than other people. I don't think that's a very sustainable view. Secondly, it's going to clog up the whole of London, and the pollution from the congestion is going to be horrendous. So how do they square that, their transport policy, with their sustainability aims?
Within their sustainability report launched on the 26th, there's a clear push towards its transport policy, and what it identifies is an expectation that 95% of the people attending the games will arrive by public transport, on foot, or by cycle.
Now, VIPs do that.
Well, that is probably a very valid point, and in terms of the VIPs, I couldn't comment.
But this is the public face of the games. This is what is going to get reported, and this is going to damage and undermine the whole effort that they've made in terms of their construction and sustainability. I mean, this is not going to go down well. Londoners will hate it.
Yeah, we've spoken to a few Londoners, and yes, I think it is an ongoing sore. I think Sebastian Coe is often found to be speaking on the subject, and I think all we can say is that they've reported on the subject what they intend to do, and they have invited the whole array of stakeholders to make their various comments. So I couldn't say anything further than that.
Taxi drivers are stakeholders, and every taxi driver I've spoken to says they're going on holiday during the Olympics because they don't think they'll be able to move.
I've heard the same.
Peter?
Yeah, you said that companies that don't report their sustainability can't care much about sustainability. You know, I take total issue with that. I don't think they said report it to care. Indeed, well, I spent my life doing it. You know, I don't think you have to report it. But what might perhaps be more constructive on that comment is, does it have a value? In other words, it might encourage people to do more if their sustainability has an actual physical, as opposed to sort of reputational or anything like that. Can I sell it?
I've gone through the various benefits. What do you mean when you say?
Well, I don't understand.
You know, the point about this is reporting.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that I think you can perfectly well care a whole awful lot about the environment and sustainability and not actually report the facts. Yeah. I don't think those two things are sequiturs.
Yeah.
But maybe what does encourage more people to do it for the reporting is not just the improvement of the reputation, which seems to be aimed at, so that investors and so forth, but actually if you do more than your bit, maybe you're totally negative, in our case, in terms of effects on the environment or sustainability, that you could sell it. If you've got a means where you can monetize the fact that you've actually gone more than the normal distance.
We're finding increasingly with various aspects of sustainability that it is being monetized. The important aspect for and to appreciate with reporting is that it offers visibility. It's about disclosure. And that means that people can engage and participate in the way in which an organisation has made its various public commitments. Now, for an organisation such as Marks and Spencer's, they will tell you that over many, many years, they've performed very well because they have this dialogue with their customers. It's a very important aspect of their business. They will tell you that that has generated millions of pounds for them. They employ this thing called Plan A within their business, which is 100 different targets. They can definitely sell the issue of sustainability. They're talking about swapping at the present time. There's a TV ad, My Soup is recycled back from the 50s. And so it is something that increasingly organisations are able to sell on many, many levels. The issue for us today in terms of reporting, as I've said, is visibility. So when you have the International Integrated Reporting Committee, which has looked at the history of financial reporting and the many decades that it's taken in order to converge that area of reporting, and the importance of understanding that to the investor community, financial statements mean 20% of the picture. So sustainability reporting, when you, in terms of an organisation buying into it is beginning to understand that business today is more than the financial aspect and the financial capitals. It's about a wider range of capacities, capitals and values within an organisation. And in order to capture that information, they're needing to be able to report, through measurement and reporting, to establish long-term resilience within the business.
If I can come back to the Olympics for a moment. I mean, the other problem about having lanes reserved for VIPs is that you think, well, why don't they stay in hotels that are near the Olympic Stadium? Why do they have to travel across London? I mean, the answer is their partners probably want to shop at Harrods. But that's not good enough. It's no good the corporate top people saying sustainability is for the riffraff, but it doesn't apply to me, because that's the way it's coming over.
Yeah. I also couldn't disagree with that point. And when you look at Davos, one of the clear things coming from Davos is that governments around the world are rather impotent on the subject of sustainability. We may have in the UK the most progressive sets of policies, but I can tell you around the world, people are looking very carefully to see whether the UK is able to deliver on those. And that is a problem that is, unfortunately, an issue across.
And that's why you'd like the reporting to be mandatory. You'd like it to be mandatory, because then the UK could say it was leading.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what countries in Europe are mandatory?
There's a couple of countries in Europe where it's mandatory. Sweden, Norway, Denmark. French are moving towards an integrated solution, and in South Africa they have an integrated solution. There's also European legislation which eludes me at this time, which is targeted very much as we found with the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which would establish a drop-dead date around which it would be a requirement across Europe. But the development of integrated reporting is on the basis of we have to quickly get to a point where all organisations and governments around the world are showing their levels of leadership and identifying organisations that are going to be serving society into the future rather than what we currently have.
Right, have we any... Peter, yes? I'm fine, okay. Well, that was very interesting. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very glad that I bumped into you at Runnymede. Presumably you are not monitoring, I mean, you are advising companies how to fill in their GRI. That's your role, you're advising them how to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're not actually monitoring it, you're not actually saying you've got to do better or anything like that, or that you don't rank them.
No, our role is not to judge. Our role is more one of guidance and support.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. That's very helpful. Kye, thank you very much indeed.